blower today, so it's like kind of loud.
I can't hear the leaf blower,
Oh,
but
okay.
we're live.
We're live.
It's Tuesday, October 7th, I guess the second year anniversary of the October 7th attacks. The year of our Lord 2025. It is, I believe, the first day of Sukkot, the weirdest festival in the Jewish calendar, which gets you back to some serious primordial rituals. Those of you who've never seen the ritual associated with a lulav and an etrog, uh, pull yourself some YouTube videos. It's some weird shit that reminds you that Judaism has its origins in like some really primitive stuff. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorites. Um, it is 6 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time because I am in a hotel room in Aspen, Colorado, where I am severely backlit because, and I want to raise this issue with the Molly Resort Hotel in Aspen, there is no desk lamp here. So, trick of the trade when you're on the road doing live streaming from hotel rooms, you turn your desk lamp not on your face because that creates glare and shadows, but across, sort of like next to your face so you get light spillage. But it only works if you have a desk lamp. And at the Molly Hotel in the appropriately Orwellian named Room 101. There is no desk lamp, and that raises serious live streaming issues, not as serious as Alan Elrod is having right now, where his whole frame is moving. Are you seeing that, Holly, or is that just me?
I don't see it. He looks great to me.
He looks
Very
normal
nice
to
wall
you?
color. Very nice
Well,
bookshelf and wall color.
on my screen, Alan's face is doing all kinds of stuff, so I may have to reload my
His face
screen.
or his frame?
Actually, his face is being neatly cut in half and is
Oh,
going like this.
oh
The
no,
right half of his face. Oh, it may have just stopped.
that's
Hello,
not what I
Alan.
see. Yeah.
How are you?
Doing well. How are y'all? Other
So,
than the lighting problems.
well, no, your lighting is fine. It's my lighting that's the
You look
issue.
like a cult leader, Ben. You have some sort of like you
Yeah.
have this like aura about you and
And
you
that's
look
partly because the
ominous.
camera is facing up.
Yeah,
And I
you look
feel
very
like a cult
ominous. I
leader,
think
Holly. I am in my cult leader era, as the
yeah,
kids would say.
yeah.
So, look, it is 6 o'clock in the morning. I assume it is seven for Alan,
Mhm.
which, Alan doesn't have to get up at seven to be on Dogshirt TV. I do.
Certainly
I have
not.
to get up at six, and so you don't have to pity me, but pity Alan, who has gone above and beyond the call of duty to be here. Folks, I want to say I was sent yesterday a video by the estimable Mike Feinberg, which I made the good morning video on today's Dog Shirt Daily, which has the most neurotically obsessive animatronic Halloween decorations you are ever going to see. And if you want to know how Mike has been spending his time since having to leave the FBI, uh, this will account for an ungodly number of hours.
What is
Um,
scarier, Mike's front lawn or what has happened to the FBI since he left?
Well, I think this is like a big projection, and I mean projection in the psychological sense, not in the
Mm,
Ben Wittes sense. He is taking all that, the horror, the
yes.
horror that is going on at his old employer and in the country generally, and turning it against the children of his neighborhood. And I, for one, think that's pretty awesome. And oh, so Alan is moving again. It's like he has an electronic Parkinson's.
You're going crazy, is what it
I
is. I
no,
think.
I think it's actually just my screen, and
Mm.
I am going to finish the monologue, and then I'm going to refresh while you talk to Alan. Um, Folks, the sun is not yet shining in Aspen, Colorado. I don't know if the birds are chirping because the soundproofing here is pretty good. Um, but it's gonna be a great freaking day. And as and Holly's and the cactuses have something to say to you all.
Shirt TV is breaking revolution in morning television.
You are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a forking revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features is that I appear at ungodly hours of the morning, backlit with no
You're like
desk
a cult
lamp,
leader.
while our guest vibrates on my screen, and it's not distracting at all. And another one of the revolutionary features is that occasionally Holly goes and visits her family in Arkansas. And I have noticed a pattern that every time she does this, the guest shortly thereafter is Alan Elrod. Because I think what's going on, I'm not sure, but I think Holly goes to Arkansas and she either causes her to see Alan or to talk to him or to remind herself that there is this world of Southern liberal politics and maybe talk to him. I'm not sure. And then she comes back and says, Alan Elrod is coming on the show tomorrow. And some of the time I say, no, actually, Noam Dworman is coming on the show tomorrow. Make it
Well, it
Tuesday,
turns out
which is what
Alan couldn't
happened.
come yesterday anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, which is what happened yesterday. But anyway, we are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to have a kind of weird, pulsating version of Alan, or at least I am. And while Holly gets us started with Alan, I am going to fix this because it is driving me slowly and steadily insane.
yes, well, I was in Arkansas over the weekend with Alan Elrod, who he's been on the show before, but just to refresh your memory, he is the founder and what do you call yourself? CEO, head honcho
I
of the
didn't know that's
Pulaski
him.
Institution in Arkansas, based in Arkansas, but focused on Heartland, democracy in the Heartland. And he is quite a phenomenon. You've probably also seen him writing on the Bulwark, and he's a regular writer on Liberal Currents and various. I don't know. What else do you want to add to your little bio there,
Now that
Alan?
there's only one of you.
Oh, no, what, that I think that does a pretty good job of covering it. I mean, I've written other places, but I Liberal Currents I write at just about every week, and
Which is
then
fantastic. I've also written for Liberal Currents.
yeah, and
Um,
then and
I
I
only
love
write
it
for
for.
illiberal currents.
I think Orville may have launched that at some point. Um, and then
I think
I'm
that's
talking to
called Fox News.
and then yeah, and then other places. Yeah, I guess you can find me. I've written stuff for MSNBC and foreign policy as well. But Bulwark is where I like to contribute if I'm not writing for Liberal Currents.
Yes, and so Alan very kindly invited me to the Pulaski Institute Summit on Saturday, which he will talk about in a minute. And not one, but I tell you what, when you put a book out, you realize who your real friends are, and this guy is like it's very top of my list.
Is he
I hope he
is he
really.
holding a event for you at Politics and Prose against their will?
No, of course he can't beat you, Ben.
No.
However,
Just checking, because I wouldn't want to
yeah.
be outdone in the
No,
promoting.
no, no, no. He could never outdo you. You also have me on, you give me airtime like whenever I want. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
And
before, what is
various
there,
other
34 people watching?
this is a bigger audience than I would have. So, and then Alan also had a book event for me the night before, which was amazing. And like, I was like amazed. And guys, he charged admission and people
True.
still came. And that was crazy to me. And then the summit, people came to that. I met a lot of really cool people. And it made me I want to brainstorm an idea with you guys
Hey, dirty
today.
little secret. Sometimes you get better turnout if you charge admission than if you don't. And
Mm.
here's the reason. Because if you don't charge admission, everybody will RSVP and say they're coming.
Yep.
But they have
Oh,
no skin in the game. And so if you if they then like something else comes up, or they don't feel like it, or but if they've paid $10, you
unless they're an
know
economist.
what's that?
Unless they're an economist, in which case my husband and I he's
Right,
the
he
whole
doesn't
sunk
believe
cost
in the
thing.
sunk costs.
He
He
doesn't believe
believes
that, and
not in
he's
the
always
sunk cost
bagging out
fallacy.
on things.
But
So
psychologically, if you've paid a small amount of money, you have skin in the game, and
mhm.
you're going to show up if you have to walk over shards of broken glass to be there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, anyway, it was amazing. And I had a great time, had a really great time. And I was going to say something else about Arkansas or Allen, and now it's gone. Oh, charging admission. No, someone mentioned, did I take home a bag of cash? I did not, because it was all to raise money for the Pulaski Institution, and also we sold art at both events, and we raised almost $300, and I made the
Holly
art
only
donation base.
takes money in bricks of cash in kava bags. If you give her money like from admission, that's not an appropriate way to give Holly money. It's
Yeah,
got to
Mm.
be wrapped in
in
a
the Kava
kava
bag.
bag.
Yeah. Anyway, so we also raised some money selling the Ukraine and the American flag art and the postcards, which was amazing. And so it was just an all around, for me personally, for the state of America. It was a very encouraging weekend. And so, Alan, why don't you tell the folks more about the summit and Pulaski and what y'all are up to?
Yeah, that was our second summit, and I thought it went really well. We did like last year was kind of a broad general introduction to a lot of things we care about. We called it Place in Democracy in the Mid-South, and we had economics panels and other things like that. This time around, we went kind of frontally at the current crisis, which is authoritarianism, and so we focused really directly on that. We had an opening panel that was, I thought, really, really good on liberal democracy in the South. We had Michael Lee from the Brennan Center. We had Kevin Elliott from Yale. We had Andy Craig, who happens to be a Hendrix graduate, which was fun for him. He hadn't been back on campus in a long time. Hendrix College,
Hendrix is where it was,
little
college
liberal
in
arts
Arkansas.
college in Central Arkansas. We held the event at, and then we did a Christian nationalism panel with Holly and Allison Shortle from OU, who's also a Pulaski fellow, and Jim Ross, who is a professor at the University of Arkansas Little Rock. And then in the afternoon, we did a media and press freedom panel moderated by a public radio host from KUAF, my friend Matthew Moore. So that was really fun.
Yeah, so and there were a lot of young people there. I enjoyed
There were.
talking to there was a large contingent from University of Central Arkansas, where Alan's dad is he like an emeritus, or is he still like full
He's
time?
still full time for probably another year.
Okay. Well, anyway, he's a political science professor there, and so there was a really nice contingent of both faculty and students, and I really enjoyed talking to the young people and was
Hmm.
glad to see them there. So I'm wondering, is Pulaski? I mean, I know y'all are fairly new, I guess. I don't know, how long have you been around?
I mean, on the books, I think we've been around for 4 years, but this was our second summit, so this is really the second year of really getting into gear of doing events and things like that.
Are you like college outreach and kind of reaching these young people? Is that something that you're focused on particularly?
100%. We try to when we can, we try to bring on young people to do things with us. We offer them a chance sometimes to write, and then also um they help us with event organization when they want. So we've had young people before. Last year I had a young 1L from UAL helping us out, and then in the past we've had other people college age, yeah, so we really love that. And Conway is a great college town. Hendrix College is there. It's a really, really good liberal arts college, not just for the state, for the South, really. And then University of Central Arkansas is there, and actually Central Baptist College is there as well. So it's got a lot of colleges, and
Excuse me.
it yeah, bless you. It's like 25 minutes north by northwest of downtown Little Rock, and so it's a nice place to do. It's the metro, but the fact that there's so many colleges there and you can catch some college students on a Saturday morning is one reason why I like doing things there. Um, and they're the kids that I hope will stick around in Arkansas and help us make it a slightly better place.
Ben, did you have any questions for Alan?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
I am curious um, for your sense of the vibe in Arkansas right now with respect to all of these National Guard deployments using mostly Southern soldiers for policing urban neighborhoods in blue states. Is your vibey sense of it? I assume there are no Arkansas polls of whether this is a good idea, but is your sense of it that this is something that people are skeptical of, that people are instinctively behind because, blue state cities suck and
Mhm.
we should beat them until they submit? What is your sense of just where the median public opinion is, both, I mean, in Arkansas in particular, but in southern states more generally about this?
Arkansas is unfortunately, a pretty apathetic state. We've got really low uh, voter participation in this state, and so I think the median Arkansan doesn't care. Um, I don't think that's good. Obviously, I wish they would be upset about this. I think
What
the
about
median Arkansan doesn't care.
the
I think
median
that there's
Arkansan who does care?
mm,
Is it,
it,
so if you take the subset of people who would be politically activated by or politically, you know,
right.
engaged by anything short of the destruction of their own house by, you know, Kamala Harris herself showing up and, destroying it. What's your sense of the Little Rock elite opinion of it?
Oh yeah, Little Rock is fairly bluish. So there's a decent amount of frustration right here. And I think one of the reasons, the reason why events like what Holly came to are enthusiastic for the audience is because there's a hunger for speaking out among those people. People do really find it frustrating. There's not a lot of outlets for I don't even want to say progressive. There's just not a lot of outlets for sort of non-MAGA politics here. And so when you get the opportunity, we have like one publication that's really pushing things, Arkansas Times. Their editor was actually on our media panel. But outside of them, the media tends to be either your sort of typical local news or has a fairly center right to right wing bent. Um, so yeah, in the Little Rock area, there's certainly outrage. I do think, if you're asking the question, like, are there people who think that the cities deserve it? Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who, again, I think the median person doesn't think about Chicago or New York or LA or Seattle. But the ones who do, I mean, they certainly, there is a decent amount of contempt for blue cities. I wish it wasn't the case. Uh, you know, we will have to see how the prospect of if Arkansas National Guard were suddenly being sent somewhere, how that might change the way people thought. You know, so Texas obviously has people going, but I think that, you know, they're yeah, a lot of Arkansans, I think the attitude is probably that you know, it's really that the idea that these places are violent and, you know, probably need to be managed is true. You know, I think that's the stereotype of cities as violent places is certainly pretty commonplace across the South. Now, in big southern cities, there's plenty of blue people who don't think that way, right? You go to Atlanta or you go to Birmingham, and you go to sorry, my UK life set up that Birmingham. You go to Birmingham and you go to Memphis or Nashville, and it's very different. And I'll say this also: not all southern cities are the same. I got a lot of friends in Memphis. You know, that's one of the cities that are being talked about. I love Memphis. I think Memphis is the best city in Tennessee. I also think you can tell a lot about a person from Tennessee by what they say about Memphis. Um,
How do you
because
mean? For those of
oh,
us who are not Southerners, what's the version of that is comprehensible
yeah.
to Yankees?
Memphis is the of the big cities in Tennessee. There's really three major ones. There's in the middle. There's Nashville, and there's Knoxville out in the in the eastern part in the Smokies, and then there's Memphis on the west and on the Mississippi. And look, Memphis is the black city. Memphis is much more gritty. I love Memphis. I think it's fantastic. I think culturally, it's amazing. Um, but you know, it is the punching bag in a lot of ways for Tennessee, and they kind of treat it like it's more of an enclave of Mississippi or Arkansas. You know, it's certainly not as wealthy as Nashville, and Knoxville's it's kind of tucked away in the east where the University of Tennessee is, and so Memphis has its own personality, fantastic culture. But you know, there is a way of talking about Memphis that is very clear. What you really mean is black people. What you really mean is,
Exactly.
yeah,
I was gonna say like
yeah.
it's more black
You
than
mean what?
Nashville.
You mean that
Yeah.
you don't like Memphis because it's black. You think Memphis is dangerous because it's black. You think Memphis is dirty because it's black. You think Memphis is,
That's sort
uh,
of the way Trump talks about Baltimore.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's also an
And
odd
to
city.
be
You know,
fair,
Memphis
Memphis does have a high crime rate, to be
Memphis
fair.
is a really black city, and it has one of the few Southern Jewish congressional representatives in Steve Cohen from
Right,
Memphis.
who was super nice to Kash Patel in Kash Patel's congressional testimony the other day because uh, apparently Mr. Cohen regards the FBI's surge in Memphis as effective and valuable. So I took note of the fact that of all the Democratic members of Congress, kind of the only one who had a uh, polite and respectful uh, um, I wouldn't say completely without challenge, but it was mostly a constructive engagement with Kash Patel was Representative Cohen of Memphis.
And to be fair, like it does have a high crime rate relative to other American cities.
Yeah,
Memphis
sure.
does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
it's one of the highest in the country.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Um,
there are places where
Yeah,
it's violent,
I like
really.
Memphis. I The Civil Rights Museum there is amazing. They've turned and built onto the motel where Martin Luther King was assassinated. It's part of a museum complex now, and it is amazing. And yeah, it's really really good. And so I was there a couple years ago and hadn't really been. I've passed through Memphis a million times because the interstate runs through it, but I hadn't really been to
Hmm.
Memphis in recent memory, if ever. And so I was down there, and we went and saw the ducks at that Peabody Hotel. They do a parade. There's these ducks that
Oh
they
yeah, the
like,
Peabody
what is it,
Ducks.
twice a day they parade through the lobby of the Peabody
Yeah.
Hotel. It's so cute. And then we had really good food, and we went down. It was daytime, so we didn't, but still on Beale Street there was
Yeah.
music going, and anyway, really cool place. Yeah.
So, there has been a fair bit of talk about a National Guard deployment in Memphis, and with the consent of the governor, who, of course, does not have the same political opposition to it that you would if you were J.D. Pritzker or Gavin Newsom. Uh, but my impression is that it hasn't happened yet. Is that right?
No, there've been federal agents there. And all I know from my friends in Memphis is that there's this kind of sense of like, well, they keep saying it's going to happen, right? They keep saying. No one's come around and said like, actually, we're not going to do it. But they keep saying they're going to do it, and yet the actual sort of troop deployment stuff doesn't seem to have happened yet. There are other federal agents in Memphis right now. I think it's complicated for the city. They are doing better recently on crime, and so I think they
Right.
want
Crime everywhere is coming down.
right,
Mhm.
and so they want a chance to say that. And so I think it's one of those things where they want to say like, well, things are getting better in Memphis. How much that should be attributed to anything the Trump administration is doing is obviously contestable. But yeah, I mean, my impression is that no actual soldiers have been walking around Memphis yet. And so it, I mean, they keep being told that it's going to happen. We'll see. And I mean, I think that this trend of, Illinois is interesting because Trump has this opportunity to have some sort of showdown with Pritzker, I suppose. But these blue dots in red states are their own kind of phenomenon, right? Because the governors are just they don't they don't have any reason to push back, and in fact, maybe they want to punish the little blue areas in their
Yeah.
states if they have a chance. Little Rock is certainly potentially that in Arkansas, although Sarah Huckabee Sanders hasn't made. And probably one big reason for that is that Memphis is not the capital of Tennessee. The governor doesn't
Yeah.
live in
Yeah.
Memphis.
I was gonna
The
say
governor
she
doesn't
lives
have
in
to
Little
deal
Rock.
with any. Little Rock, on the other hand, is our capital. So if there was a troop deployment to Little Rock, uh, the governor would have to deal with that in her own front yard.
Thank you.
So, what are the other southern cities that you think are at risk of that? You think sort of high crime, blue with a red state governor, and therefore nobody has incentive to go to bat for them. I imagine there must be some of those in Florida, right?
Yeah, sure. Florida. I mean, Florida cities are weird, and I wouldn't really consider them southern. I mean, the biggest city
Doesn't
in
it,
Florida
don't
that I
they get southern the further north you go?
yeah, Jacksonville's southern. I bet Jacksonville will be targeted. Uh, Jacksonville is also a bit blue. Yeah, Birmingham, Alabama, I think. Right. It's I think that's a target. Probably Mobile. Uh, Probably New Orleans, obviously in Louisiana. Uh, Atlanta's another complication in Georgia because it's so big and it's the capital. But yeah, I think Birmingham certainly. I think Mobile probably. I think New Orleans you could see being targeted certainly. I think um, Mississippi doesn't really have that many big cities.
Right.
Jackson's the biggest. Mississippi's not a very urban state. It's not a place where you would have much there. You could see. I mean, Atlanta has its own thing where they've been fighting this big um, expansion of police facilities they call Cop City for a long time. So there's already pre-existing tensions in Atlanta that precede anything like the Trump administration or and really the sort of left-right boundaries of this stuff. I mean, I don't think it'll happen I mean, South Carolina is similar to Mississippi. It's not particularly urban. So that's another thing is the South has a number of states that are not, they don't really have big cities. I mean, Arkansas too, I guess. Little Rock is our biggest city, and
That's more of a metroplex. See,
yeah.
one of the issues is the South, the cities are so like sprawled,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? They're more like metroplex issues, and I feel like that that's kind of a different dynamic. But
Yeah.
on that note, I would like to change subjects if that's okay.
Sure.
Ben, is that okay?
Oh, yes.
Okay, because I actually one of the main reasons I wanted to have Alan on, and particularly to talk to Ben, is to I mean, Ben had the idea some months ago that he mentioned on this show as kind of uh, democracy sort of gathering spaces. And what Alan did with the summit, but I think more to what Ben has talked about previously was the book event that Alan did for me. There's this sort of common space that he rented out or in Little Rock where there's food and then nearby there's like a bar and there's food trucks and bookstore. Anyway, it was a great space. And like people really it was a gathering place for like-minded people in a place where there's not that many. Like my mother-in-law, I brought my mother-in-law from Hot Springs and my one of my good friends from Hot Springs. They both feel very sort of isolated and alienated where they are, and they enjoyed coming to an event like that and being able to talk to people and being able to feel like they're not the crazy ones, for an evening. And I just think what Alan is doing in Arkansas with the Pulaski Institute, and I realize that it's kind of a think tank, but I feel like the social component is really important and something that could be really scaled up. Why not form sort of democracy clubs like the Kiwanis Club? There should be like a network of democracy clubs. And Principles First has kind of done this a little bit with it, but it has these events, and it brings in these sort of big names, and it'll have like a landmark, sort of not a landmark, but like a special event like every year in one place. And I'm talking about like more grassroots democracy clubs that organize maybe monthly get-togethers with maybe a program, but a lot of time to just socialize and connect. And they could be and they could start in any town, and I don't think you'd need to have a space. You could even start them in people's homes, but I feel like there needs to be this, kind of and then they could be connected and a basis for activism as well. But I really do think that Ben had kind of this idea for a place in DC, and I'm like, I I'm surrounded, like I can have a dinner party, and I'm surrounded by liberals all the time. It's places like Arkansas and these red states where there are a lot of people. And sorry to ramble, and then the other function of it is it becomes an identifiable, like if you're discontented but you don't have, like, all your friends are this, and you don't know really how to get out of this MAGA universe that you're in, and you don't know who you'd hang out with and where you would belong. Then you have like, oh well, I can go to the Pulaski Institute get together, or or just the Democracy Club. I can go to my local Democracy Club monthly gathering, and I can meet new people, and I can sort of hear new ideas. And it's very big tent. It's basically people who don't want to live in an authoritarian country, and that's kind of that's the only real entry point. And yeah, so I just see a real need here, both socially, with American, a lot of these Kiwanis and Rotary and some of these institutions sort of going by the wayside over the years, and with church attendance down, I see a sort of a community need, but also like politically, I think it would be very important. So there, I'll shut up now. Talk.
You're speaking my heart, really. I mean, this what you're describing, the kind of like spoken wheel imagery you're describing of all of this is very much how I've been thinking since we started Pulaski. We're working on trying to do ourselves more events in other places. I don't want to just be. I really don't want to just do things in Arkansas. I want to do things. We're talking with a new fellow about trying to do something in southwestern Ontario. Actually, where I'm working with some other people about trying to do something in up in New England, hopefully in Maine. I want to do things across the country, and the references to declining trade and change Kiwanis, the Putnam aspect of all, yeah, it speaks deeply to my soul. I really do think that providing the space for this kind of revitalization of civic spirit in a lot of these places is hugely important, because so much of what's happening right now has to do with the atrophying of that. And that's part of what makes the really toxic version of nationalization of politics plausible. I the idea of doing more things in a kind of almost club-like fashion across heartland areas, yeah, 100% I want to do that. That's exactly actually kind of what I want to do. My
Have
dream
you
would be able to have
talked?
outlets everywhere in these places.
Have you? I know you're sort of connected somewhat to Principles First. I don't know, is this an idea that you've talked to some of the more, or like Bill Chris? Do you know Bill Crystal?
I
Have you
know
had a meeting with?
Bill, but not well.
Okay,
But we've met.
okay, yeah, or Sarah Longwell.
So I've never
Uh,
gotten to meet Sarah. I would love to, but
okay, I
Well,
feel
we
like
can
you need
fix
to know
that.
Sarah.
okay,
So,
You need to know Sarah.
all right.
Because
And you
what
can
you've
tell I've
done.
listened to you and hers French Village podcast all the way through. Uh, uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Ben knows all the people that you need to know, I think. And
but this is my
yeah, since you
dream. You're
haven't.
describing my dream, Holly, in terms of all this stuff, and maybe it's even because I grew. I get it. I tell people about this stuff, and I'll say, yeah, I'm not an evangelical anymore, but I grew up one, and the imprint there of what you're describing. I mean, that's hey, go be missionary kids for democracy. Uh,
So I just want to point out to everybody that while we're here planning a network of clubs all over the country
hey, Jeff, drop
and
a word.
roving events, the chat, the Greek chorus is having an obsessive discussion
What
of
are y'all
which
doing?
About
bugs
palmetto
and
bugs?
lizards in which states are the most horrifying. And I just want to
Guys,
say that that is the kind of split screen that I am totally here for.
I
And I don't know if it reflects, a lack of interest in what we're talking about or just true horror at bugs.
Do people
But
just want me
they're
to describe
interested because
the
this is very
various
important stuff.
things that
yeah,
can kill you in Arkansas? I mean,
look, I just want to say I'm out here in Aspen, Colorado, where you might get trampled by an elk. Um,
we do have
so
spiders. We have a lot of black widows and brown recluses.
yeah, I have
And tarantulas. One time I was driving in Arkansas and I literally from a distance as I approached, it was so big I could see it like as I'm driving. A tarantula was crossing the road.
Oh,
well, I am
no,
pro
yeah.
tarantula. I like them. I like things that are preternaturally large for the species that they should be part of. Like I'm pro megalodon, and I like, whale sharks. And no tarantula has ever bothered me. So leave the tarantulas alone. So I want to say just a word in defense of having a space.
Mhm.
Um, and, Sarah and I, along with our partner in crime, Alyssa Rosenberg, have been working on this problem. And I think it's probably, in Arkansas, you want to be mobile because you want to go out to where the people are, right?
Yeah.
Where Holly's mother-in-law is, and you want to give her a place to come to. But there are people in Memphis like that, right? There are people you want to create you got to cover a lot of ground. The DC area is actually quite compact.
Mhm.
And the percentage of people in the democracy space who work in either DC proper or in the close-in suburbs, particularly on the Virginia side, is really, really large. And the amount of, I'm going to use the word, conspiracy that is not happening because people aren't in the same room.
Yeah.
And, I was in the same room with some people last night and we were conspiring about things we could do together. And you get some food, a little bit of beer, scotch, whatever, non-alcoholic, whatever it is you want to drink. You get a little bit of that, and some interesting people around a table. You're going to come up with all kinds of interesting ideas. And I think there is, I want, my idea of a space is that people should, not quite wander in off the street, but there are people who I don't know, sprites of mischief all over the place, who I want to hear from. And I want, them to meet Holly, and I want George Conway to sit around with them. And I just want a place that we all hang out. You know, the equivalent, the sort of adult equivalent of the vacant lot that was at the end of my street when I was a kid, which was where we all hung out. And we all hung out there, and the homeless guys who lived in the vacant lot were like our friends, and
Mhm.
we would and it was like a super nice community thing. And I would come home from school and I'd be like, Mom, going out to the lot. And that was like the vacant lot on the corner. And it was all very, you're not allowed to do that anymore. It would be like considered bad parenting anymore. But it was great. The vacant lot was fabulous. And I want a vacant lot with furniture and a little bit of food and like an air conditioning system, because the summer is hot in Washington and the winter it's never really cold, but it's a little bit too cold to hang out outside and just, sit on a brick. I want it to be attractive enough that people just want to hang out there. And I think if we did that, that would be generative to all kinds of useful things, and that's where we would plot the revolution from Stephen Miller. And so,
So,
Stephen Miller, you would have to do something about the vacant lot.
I agree.
so I mean, I love any and all these. I just see these as two different sort of things. And again, no offense to the DC set of which I'm a part, but there's an elite level, and then and there's a just common people who are wanting to connect and engage and don't know how to do that. And there's just a huge divide. Honestly, there's not much real and between the coasts and the heartland, what Alan's doing. And I just think as a nation, we might be able to win the next election and sort of claw our way back. But the long term project is getting Americans to believe in democracy again on a grassroots level. I don't see that it's sustainable as a nation to keep living from election to election
No, I
and hating each
Yeah.
other and not really understanding this project. And so I really, again, I also am influenced by my evangelical background. And, my dad was a church planner. And you go in, and what he did was he would go up on Mount Kenya. I mean, there were plenty of Christians, but he wanted to plant Baptist churches. And he first of all, he would see like where the current ones were. And then he would sort of go where there wasn't a church. And he would just sort of, back then there was no internet or phones, nobody had phones, so it was just literally talking to people, and then they'd decide to gather, and then they would bring neighbors, and it would sort of grow, and then they had a church, and then that was sort of a home base. But so that kind of thing with like a democracy club, And then it could be grassroots. Again, if you want to start a democracy club in your community, like the Kiwanis, you get some sort of, you tie it into the larger network, but you could start it in your house, a house church, you start a house church. And then over time, hopefully it scales up and you can have projects in your community and you can do activism and you can be tied into larger networks of people and activists like Principles First and Indivisible. Like I think Indivisible is doing a great job in terms of these big events and sort of mobilizing energy and activism. But again, there's like a big event and then like it's like, okay, what do we do until the next event? And you could have places, you could have monthly, meetings and gatherings where you just honestly get courage and get encouragement and build strength. And I mean, I just think there's a huge pent up demand out there in red state, in deep red states, guys. There are hidden people who are not on board with this and they don't know what to do and they don't know how to speak and they're afraid because all of their friends are MAGA. And courage, it's cliche, it's becoming cliche, but courage is contagious. So you see one person speaking out and then you're like, well, actually I've been kind of thinking that, but I wouldn't say it out loud. And so then maybe one other person says it out loud and then maybe another person says it out loud. And I'm not like I'm pro Ben's idea, but it's like a different.
But it is a different concept, but I think it's an importantly related concept because all of the people who are going to be doing Allen clubs around the country, we want many nerve centers for those. There has to be, for all those churches, there has to be a Christian coalition, right?
Yes.
And I don't want to be Ralph Reed because yuck, but there has to be like a place that people look at as a sort of democracy mothership. Alice, where do you look at as the democracy mothership?
Well, I was just going to mention, like, there already are a lot of like groups out there. Like, I am a patron of Network Nova, which is actually based out of Northern Virginia, and I can put you in contact with them, Holly. But they do a lot of stuff for the elections this year, especially working in rural Virginia. And then there's like Rural Ground Game, and then there's Every State Blue and Jess Piper. So I think maybe Ben is right in that you do need like a central thing so that you can get more funding to these groups and, make people aware of them. Cause I've been on a lot of Zooms and stuff in the past few years. So I know some of them, but it's getting funding to all those things and making it more of a network and not just like isolated things, and then having, I think, consistent funding so they can not just have like an event once a year with the Democratic Club.
Correspondence.
So
with every little town in France, and that was before they started cutting people's heads off.
So I'm glad you suggested. So many things running through my brain. One is the through line to all of this to me is you got to get people in the room together, whether that's in local clubs or in big city. You got to get people in the same space. The energy that comes from that is you can't match it. I love this. I love that I'm getting to sit and chat with you guys and Ben's and Aspen and Holly's. And are you back in DC now? DC, and it's really great, but there's really nothing better than being in the same room. I'm glad you mentioned that. One of the things I was thinking about while you were talking was I went on like an international trip coffee thing when I was in college. In the last place we ended the tour at Procope in Paris, and they have the rights of man on the wall because it was one of the places, these restaurants in Paris where the Jacobin clubs met, and this idea that coming together matters. I said this kind of joke, another evangelical joke at the weekend at the thing, which is, the saying from the Gospels is, wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there I will be with you. And so democracy is the same thing, right? Wherever we gather people, the spirit of this thing is there. And so I don't see these things as intention. I see them as part of this. That's why I said sort of spoken wheel, because to me, and I want to say I'm glad Alice hopped on. I thought that was great. This idea of um, putting people in the same room together is crucial. I'm thankful for technology. I'm also thankful for the way the pandemic maybe encouraged people to use a lot of virtual networking tools because they're helpful. But I love being in the same room as people if I can. And
Yeah,
so,
and like
yeah.
so and so again, what I think, yeah, I think it's important to have these sort of elite gatherings, but I just think there's um yeah, like the Principals First conference is great, but it's like you go in and you sit sort of passively in an audience and you hear I mean, no offense, they're all fantastic, but it's the usual suspects sort of say the usual things, and it's great. It's great to see them, and over time you become fans of certain people, and you fangirl or fanboy your favorite democracy activist or whatever. Um,
See, I always
and
just
then
want to get to hang out with JVL, and he hates crowds. So.
Well, good luck pinning him down. So the last Principals First gathering I went to, they had a Bulwark happy hour, and like the first one I went to, it was manageable. It was small, and I actually got to talk to some people. This one was just like, man, I was like, I see these guys. I can see these guys somewhere else. Like I'm gonna leave. But anyway, it seemed. I mean, again, I'm not trying to be insulting to anything that's going on or Ben's ideas, but it seems very elite centric. I go and I enjoy these things. Don't get me wrong, and I meet a few people on the sidelines that I've made some friends. Melissa, hey Melissa, met Melissa, who I'm going to connect you with, Alan, because she's a big Principals Firster. I meet some great people at these events, but it seems its main function is a platform for elites, and rather than actually a place for the people to gather and connect and hear from each other and draw courage from each other, and sort of, it seems to be, a platform for elites.
As a verified, unapologetic elite, um, who runs a platform for elites, i.e., lawfare, and has a show called Dogshirt TV, of which there are 36 people watching right now, all of whom are in some sense elites. Um, I am not going to apologize for the fact that uh, you know I am not talking to the people. And by the way, I would be shitty at talking to the people because I have this accent that drips off me that I went to some college or other college, and that I am a you know, child of multiple levels of PhDs and advanced degrees. I mean, it just drips off me. I'm the least educated person in my family in some generations. So I'm not going to like spend my time pretending that I have like some, you know, rapport with the people, that I could be a populist or anything. Um, and yeah, I use big words. Um, and so it's just not plausible for me to be the organizer of gatherings of the people. Um, and by the way, there is nothing more pretentious than people like me pretending to be in touch with, the salt of the earth. Um, Sorry, it's not, this is a super, super noble effort. It can't be my effort.
Sure.
My effort is bringing together all the people who walk through my life, some of whom are doing that, like Alan, some of whom are doing uh, wacky stuff involving, um, uh, creating interesting databases that I didn't know you could create, some of whom are writing books about missionary kids, and some of whom are, former FBI analysts who recognize that I use big words and are concerned about the state of their previous uh, employer. And, bringing them together, creating forums, and seeing what the heck happens. And that's my particular role in life. And also, to be a writer who writes what I think about things and to run lawfare. And so I think that there is no tension whatsoever between these visions and the idea. Alan's idea is to set up 100 of these things all over the place. And my idea is that when he comes through Washington, he should know that there's this building that's the sort of place that he would want to hang out in and where he's going to meet people to fund shit. And he's going to be able to do his interviews from there. And he's also going to be able to sit back with people who are aware of his work or would want to be aware of his work and, have an iced tea. That's, I think
Sweet
these
tea,
are
I
like, well, God, no, I'm diabetic, but, it can be as sweet as you want it to be, but it starts unsweetened. We're a not in the South here.
I think what's interesting to me about all this is I feel like I'm a Frankenstein's person in the sense that my dad is from the Philly area. He has a PhD. I grew up. My mom's side is my grandpa is a Church of Christ preacher, and um, I went to a small Christian college, but then I went to NYU, and I've I don't feel like I think having a foot in both worlds is instructive, and I don't think it would be fair for me to pretend like I'm salt of the earth in a total sense either. I've had a lot of educational opportunities and a lot of things that I've gotten to do, and a lot of people here would certainly consider me uh, an
Yeah, but
uppity.
here's the
Uh,
difference between you and me.
yeah,
You
and
can set up an event
yeah, it's
at
true.
which people who I cannot set up an event in, anywhere outside a big city
Right.
that anyone will come to,
Yeah.
and you can.
Yeah.
And by the way, the city doesn't have to get very not big before I can't turn out 10 people.
Hmm.
you know and so you're talking about, like, if I do an event in LA, we'll have people. If I do an event in
Yeah.
Seattle, if I do an event in Memphis, no one's going to come. No one.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's true of Nashville too, right? You don't have to get to a particularly small city before, like, there and I think the importance of creating networks of
Yeah.
people of the sort that Holly's talking about, people who are lost in red states. And I don't mean red as opposed to blue. I
Right.
mean, you know, Kate's point in the chat that there are a lot of people who are red but not MAGA. There are a lot of people who are not Democrats but are not interested in authoritarianism, right? Having this basic commitment
Yeah.
to getting every single one of those people involved in pro-democracy activity, that is the most important project in the world. And I'm just saying I am very ill positioned to do that.
And
Um,
I think branding is key, Alan. I mean, I love Pulaski Institute in terms of how, but like a more, like,
Well, I
again,
love
just
this big
democracy
base
clubs.
idea. I love the idea of knowing there's a place I could go. I'm into that.
Yeah.
I'm really into that.
Well, the mothership,
Yeah.
yeah. But like democracy clubs or like, definitely this would be something, a lot of the sort of networks that are there have already have kind of a left wing or progressive reputation and are sort of like, ooh, scary, move on. It's, whatever, move on to org. Oh no, like,
Mm.
or even individual. And, I think it would, the ethos would need to be very clear that this is very big tent. The only to get in the door, the only, we believe in democracy and we are against authoritarianism, and that's it.
I agree.
Folks, we're going to wrap, but there is a place already existing, a location that you can come to where we are pro democracy. We are getting together in small groups, smaller than I'd like. We are hanging out regularly, and we are engaged in what Jonathan Rauch calls fellowship, what I call conspiracy. And that place is Dogshirt TV. It is here every morning at 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, 6 o'clock a.m. Central Time. And Alan Elrod, I think I said this to you last time, but once you have that link, you are entitled to show up anytime, any day, announced or unannounced. And if you want to be added to our list of co-hosts, let me know, and I will just add you to the list, and you can be part of our merry band. But you don't even need that. You can just show up whenever you feel like it, much as the members of the Greek chorus do. And that link will take you right up on screen. Folks, we're going to be back tomorrow. I have no idea who the co-hosts are going to be. They might be Holly Berkley Fletcher. They might be Mike Feinberg, former FBI agent with a lot of time on his hand to design the most eccentric animatronic Halloween decorations, which you can see on Dogshirt Daily today. They might be Alan Elrod, who may just show up again tomorrow unannounced. They might be Nastia joining us from Oslo, where she is at a conference. I don't know who the guest is going to be either. As Alan can tell you, he didn't know as of yesterday morning that he was going to be on today. So, these things are fluid because it's just kind of a democracy hangout. And until we have a building, until we have a place a nerve center to get together and plot and do events, until we have clubs all over the country run by Holly's mother-in-law in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and 1,000 other women, and they will mostly be women, because you want to organize something, you do not leave that to the men. Until
That's another whole topic. That's a nerve, man. I'm going to have to come back to that.
Yeah, but it's right that, the men do not do a good job organizing shit. And that's why you're pulling your hair out. It's going to be women. Until we have that all over the country,
Such a cop out.
we have Dogshirt TV, and we will be back tomorrow.